Welcome to Monster Monday. So, I got the Fly collection. I've shown you this before. I got this from Peter Benevente for reviewing the Underworld franchise. It is currently at Walmart for $39.99, but we bought it for $78 on eBay, so I was pretty bummed about that. But here we go. So, I plan on, for the next 4 weeks, reviewing the Fly collection here with The Fly, Return of the Fly, The Curse of the Fly, and then the Fly 2, which is the sequel to the Cronenberg Fly. I already covered the Cronenberg Fly for a Monster Monday, so that one's already knocked out. But here we go with the first Fly right here. And this face is fairly iconic to the movie when the wife screams out in horror. Now, Vincent Price is in this one, as is he in the second one as well. I feel like I've seen this movie before I watched it. Now, having watched it, not sure I had seen it. Typically, I don't like movies before the 60s. So I kind of steer clear of them. But to be completely honest, this box set is just beautiful. And I had to have it. And I really, really wanted to see the Flies anyway. Now for $40, I would have definitely bought this myself. But for like $80, I was like, I don't know, man. I don't really know the Fly series that well. Am I really going to drop $80? I don't know. The packaging and the box and everything is so cool, but do I really want that? And then when Peter offered it up, I was like, okay, I'll take it, because it's just so cool. Even if I don't like these movies, it'll be a badass addition to the collection, you know? There's definitely a decent amount of movies that I own that just look badass and are not very good movies. So that's a bit of a problem, I will say. That's silly, but I don't really care. In case you see my sweat, it's, I don't know, 100 degrees inside this place right now, and the air conditioning's so loud that I can't put it on. So, as I said, this one has Vincent Price in it, and it starts off with the death. So this is a very, very 50s movie. Like the way the wife acts, she's very subservient to the husband, and there's some really, really silly shit in here. But it's also just a product of its time. The music in this movie, outside of like the moments where it's supposed to be horrifying, where the Fly's head is revealed and that kind of is like, bang, that kind of stuff, the rest of the musical score in this is like super light-hearted, whimsical. Whimsical is always the word I use to describe these kinds of this kind of music, but it's the perfect description for music like this. It's very whimsical. It's very light and fluffy and charming, and a product of the 50s. You would feel like you were watching some, romance movie or comedy or something, not a horror movie. The music in this, especially like the opening credits, you're like, what is this? A fucking Marilyn Monroe movie? Like, what am I watching right now? What is this score? Shouldn't this be haunting? Shouldn't this be chilling music? It's not at all. Not at all. So yeah, we get the death of the Fly in the opening, and it plays out like an investigation. There's a man, and he's crushed under a press, and there's blood everywhere. I was surprised to see so much red blood everywhere on the press, because I know Hitchcock filmed Psycho in black and white because of the blood. I think it was part of the budget as well, this and that, but it was a lot of it had to do with like the blood, and if it wasn't red, it wouldn't be as provocative. It wouldn't be as distasteful and thought of as edgy and whatnot. So like they could get it past the MPAA. But here's a movie that came out before it, right? This is 57? What era? What? 1958. Okay, that's pretty close. So it's 2 years before, and this one got in the theater no problem. Now, granted, this is an aftermath death, and this is something that he did to himself, technically. We don't know that till later on. And then Norman Bates is a slasher. I mean, he's hacking a girl up with a knife and showing blood all over, I guess, would seem more violent. But, I don't know, it's just odd to me. There's blood everywhere in this film in that scene. And I was like, surprising they can show that. And they even lift it up, and there's just like an arm and like some legs, and his whole body is just smashed and is just blood. Pretty wild. Pretty wild. You wouldn't see that typically in a film like this. So then the doctor comes in, and he gives the TOD at 30 minutes ago. Not really sure how he gauges that. I don't know what their methods were back then. I know liver temperature is a big way that they calculate time of death now. Unless the death is like much more advanced, then they start to develop that through the bugs and what stage that they're in. They can determine how long that body's been dead. I've watched a lot of CSI. Who knows if any of that shit's real though? So I'm saying it like it's fact, and it's a fucking TV show. Could be totally full of shit. But they try to remain accurate on that kind of stuff at least. So I have a feeling that is how they determined it here. Anyway, I don't know how he gets that, but then after they determine that, they go all the way back to the house to interview the wife, and while they're talking to her, she finally comes clean and is like, I killed my husband about a half an hour ago. And it's like, okay, either that doctor is really shitty at his job and he died 2 seconds ago and he thought it was 30 minutes, or B, this timeline is way fucked up. Because by the time they get to her house, it should have been at least a half an hour later or something. They still had some investigation. I mean, even if they drove straight there or was across the street. I guess if this place is across the street and they just walked right there to there, like 2 seconds after that doctor said that, then maybe. So I'm not saying it's impossible. It just, the timeline did not seem to match up. The fact that she said a half an hour and the guy said a half an hour just felt off. It was like, should be about an hour ago. That would have made more sense, but I don't know. Anyway. And then we find out that Vincent Price's character here loves his sister's wife, but she never wanted anything to do with him and married his brother. And as I had said about the whole product of its time, there's a moment where they're talking to the little boy, the main character's here son, and he's talking about his mom, and he's giving this description of like this and that, and then somewhere in there he goes, towards the end, he says something about her not being able to keep her emotions or something. He's like, you know how women are. This is like a 5 or 6 year old kid. This is very much a product of its time. I don't even think a kid would say that even then, but you could see like that's the writing of that time. Like, you know how women are. They're just so emotional with their periods and such. Like, it was just so funny. The way he delivered that line, you know how women are. It's like, no, go ahead, little man. Tell me. Elaborate. How are women? It's just such a ridiculous comment. You know how women are. It made me laugh out loud. And then the wife finally admits that she was acting mad because she didn't want to, for them to find out, for her to get taken away, this and that. But then she comes clean when she realizes she's going to get charged for the murder. I don't know why she wouldn't think that to begin with. Like, obviously. Ironically, I hear a fly in this trailer right now. Maybe we're going to get a cameo from the fly itself. Let's listen. Maybe what is that? Help me. That was a good ventriloquist act, huh? Help me. Now, can I? Help me. Can't see the lips move. Help me. I can't do it. You know what it reminded me of, though, the help me part? Was Mrs. Voorhees in Friday the 13th when Jason is calling out to her and she's doing her own voice. She's like, Mommy, help me. Kill them, mommy. Like, that's what it sounded like. It sounded like a little Mrs. Voorhees fly. It's pretty funny. That's actually a really, really fucking sad part of the movie at the end. But we'll get to that. But anyway, so she says she's acting mad. So then she lays the whole real story on them. And this guy is making a disintegrator integrator. And this is a teleportation device like you would see in Star Trek. And he's talking about how this would revolutionize the world and that they could move things from, one side of the planet to the other at no cost, that they could ship things up to space, back and forth easily, that there would be no more use for cars or spaceships or any of that kind of stuff. And I was like, you're right, man. If you could successfully, it's funny too, because the way he describes how it works is identically the same way that they describe how it works in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory or Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. When Max TV goes up there and he's, and they're shipping out the chocolate bar across the airwaves, except for in that version it becomes much, much smaller. I've always wondered how they fixed Max. Like, what did they do? Beam him back the other way? Like, I've never understood what the hell they did. I don't understand what they did with any of those kids. Like, what'd they do with Violet? They're going to juice her? Is that going to turn her skin back to normal? Like, did they get to Veruca Salt before she freaking went into the incinerator? Like, did Augustus Gloop drown in that damn thing? So, anyway, all right, we're not here to talk about Willy Wonka. Just always found that to be funny. That's a straight-up horror movie for kids. It really is. It's a very, very good one. Gene Wilder is incredible in it. I like how he sends it through and he's showing his wife and she's like, oh, like, am I going to come out back or whatever? She shows him the Made in China and it's like backwards on the plate and he just freaks. I'll tell you this. I wish I was this obsessed and this passionate about anything. Not even like, there's nothing I'm that passionate and obsessed with. Not my movies, not chicks, not even my daughters am I this obsessed. Like, this is his only focus. He has no desires outside of that. He is committed to his work. Now, that seems slightly appealing, and it seems slightly unappealing. Like, I want to have other things that I'm into. But for some reason, there is like a romance. Like, it's almost romanticized in the way that I see it in film, of this like mad scientist who works day and night feverishly on one idea, and he can't sleep or she can't sleep until it's finished, until they've conquered this goal. Because, there are goals that I want to accomplish that I just don't set my mind to enough to accomplish them. Like, I want to get a script made into a film, but I don't want it bad enough to do it. Like, that really is what it comes down to at the end of the day. Like, you can make up whatever excuse you want, but the reality is more than likely, a very high percentage, you're just not trying hard enough. You're not dedicating enough. You're not making it a priority. You're making it a dream. Oh, maybe tomorrow. I'll get, maybe next year. It's my New Year's resolution. But okay, but yeah, there was the pandemic, and this pandemic was the perfect time to write a script, So there's plenty of opportunities to do these things. So when I'm looking at this guy and he's obsessing over his work and he won't leave, and as soon as she points out a problem, he goes and he recalculates and reconfigures and checks every single circuit and everything to make sure this is right. I don't even know what he changes to make the thing work properly. But then this sick bastard goes and takes his house cat, the cat that's domesticated and a part of their family, and he throws that thing through. Now, at first, when he put it in there with the bowl of milk, I thought this thing was going to come out like half cat, half bowl. Like, I thought it was going to be like, in like Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. I think it's the Sorcerer's Stone. It might be Chamber of Secrets. Can't remember. It's Chamber of Secrets, because this is when Ron's wand is broken. That's right. This is why this happens. And he tries to turn Scabbers into a cup, and he turns it into like a rat cup. It looks like a cup made out of a rat and the tail's still moving. That's exactly what I thought was going to come out of there. Like a cat-skinned plate with a tail that was like wagging around. That would have been awesome. But instead, we get this like ghost cat kind of thing that never comes back into play, by the way. He just sends it through, and then you just hear the cat meowing in the ether. It's like, where's that cat? And it doesn't really make any sense, because when he explains it later, he talks about how we're all these atoms and particles and this and that matter can be transferred and then, you know, reconfigured and put together back in the same place. That's how he's able to do it. You know, we seem like a solid mass, but at our molecular level, we're actually just little bits of neurons and electrons and whatever. So the way he describes it, I'm like, then how is it meowing? If whatever a cat uses, it doesn't have vocal cords, I don't think, but whatever makes a cat meow, it's not you know, bonded. It's not structured together now, so it wouldn't have the capability of meowing. So when it's out in the room, there's no more meowing. There's a one meow, and it would be like, that wouldn't work. But then for the rest of the film, the cat's just gone. It's just, that's it. Doesn't return. He brings it up one other time, and he tells his wife, like, I fucking killed our cat. I sent it out into space. Like, it's just particles flying around us right now. She fucking gets over it and is like having drinks with, and it's kind of implied that she fucks him. Like 2 seconds later, he's like, oh, honey, I killed our cat, but Lay, I'm gonna change the world. And she's like, all right, cheers. It's a trip, man. It's a total trip. And then he sends the gerbil through, or the guinea pig. I always get those confused. And it's successful, and he sends it through twice, and the thing is totally fine. So his machine works 100%. And it's funny to me because his machine doesn't really have any faults. It's just his faults that fuck this machine up. So now he goes to these lengths of, like, once he's turned half man, half fly, which is much different than Cronenberg's. The Cronenberg version makes more sense to me for sure. But this one actually has that, it has that thing going for it where this is solvable. Like the Grundy fly, like Jeff Goldblum's character's fly, he's fucked. There is no fixing this. He is turning into a fly. The end. It's like fused with his DNA, and man, that's just such an awesome movie. This is different, where like this half of him became a fly, and then the other half of him, bonded with the body of the fly. And so if he could send them both back through, he could become whole again, and the fly would be whole again, and they'd be all right. At least he thinks he can. There's a chance that can happen. It doesn't happen in this movie, which is really kind of dark and fucked up. You think they're going to find it, but you know they're not going to, because he's dead. And then you're thinking like, well, maybe you're like trying to figure out in your mind, like, how's this going to have a happy ending? It ain't going to have a happy ending. This guy's dead. You know that from the beginning, which I actually kind of think hurts the film, this whole investigation aspect. Like, I like it, but showing his dead body doesn't service the story very well, because you know he dies, and you know they don't find you're really just kind of finding the reveal. But the movie's called The Fly, and you see his little claw, so you know something's under there, and you're just waiting for it to be revealed. You know, he's gonna have a fucking fly head, and then she pulls it away, and he has a fucking fly head. It's not really like, oh, it's not really shocking. I mean, unless it's like something you've never seen before, and you're like, oh my god, that's terrifying, that's so scary looking. And I get that, but I don't know. There's just tweaks I would make here and there to make this film better, but this is 1958, so audiences were pretty easy to please in a lot of ways back then. Like, shocking them was not hard. That's for damn sure. I still can't get over the fact that his wife is so blah about him killing the cat. And like the son never even brings it up. Like there's never even a moment, unless I missed it, where he's like, "Where's my cat?" And what would have been really eerie is if throughout the movie, randomly, like when she was like walking through the house, like, and you could just hear meows in the house. And she was like, "What is that?" She never knew what it was, but you knew what it was. And it was just like these subtle little meows in the background. And be like, "Fuck, that's screwed up. That cat's like stuck in space for what? Forever?" And then that house is like haunted by the ghost of a cat. That would be great. It almost kind of reminds me of like Ju-on. The haunted cat in the house. This is very similar to something like that, except for they don't play on it at all. You get like one meow, and then it's just gone. And the wife doesn't give a shit, nor does the kid seem to. And I like how the wife kind of discusses her concern for technology and how fast things are moving and how uncomfortable that makes her. Yeah, especially at this like technological revolution of the 50s where they all thought that there was going to be some push button age. That was kind of the narrative that they were pushing at that time, was like, oh, soon enough, like everything's just going to be, you press a button and it's done. You don't have to do anything. And nuclear bombs were in existence at that point. They were fairly new. And there was threat of nuclear war at all times. And there was spaceships, rockets that were starting to take flight. They had what was that? They were talking about it at that time. And I don't know when Sputnik went up. I want to say it was like in the very early 60s. And I think they were starting to launch like certain kinds of crafts, and at that, like around the late 50s, I think they were starting to really like boost up this goal and this desire to try to head out into space. Like space became a big part of the final frontier, as Star Trek would call it. And so this was a very scary time for some people. We're like, that just, because what do we fear? We fear the unknown. And that world with technology moving as fast as it does, and I get very nervous about that. I get very optimistic about that stuff, and I also get very nervous about that stuff because there's a lot of good stuff that comes from technology. I think people like to kind of they seem to have lost their ability to see nuance in things. Like everything's black and white to people. So everything is either bad or it's good. Like it's like, oh, this whole subsection of things, bad. There's no good to it. And it's like, there's very few things that are like completely 100% bad across the board, and there's very few things that are 100% good across the board, have no pros or have no cons. Those things are very, very rare. Like, I cannot think of many. There's all sorts. Even sex or something that you're like, oh my God, sex is amazing. Yeah, it can lead to STDs. It can lead to kids, and that kids could be good or bad. Some people get pregnant and they're like, fuck, my life is over. And then some people get pregnant. It's like this huge celebration. They've been trying. They're so excited to have a family. So there's nuance to everything almost. There's very, very few things that are like that. And I like her, she's that ditzy housewife who's just kind of giving that obvious performance of like, oh my God, with the revolution of this and that, and I don't know what to think of it. But it's very true. Like we can relate to that. I can, for sure. I look at just communication in general and how we're going with technology right now. Like we basically are starting to move towards almost completely computer text communications. I mean, all of you guys, for the most part, I've never spoken to a single one of you. I've seen your names 100 fucking times in the comments. I feel like we're like friends. Like I respond back to your stuff. I like seeing your stuff. But I can't read inflection. I can't read body language. I can't read intent. I can't see your face. I can't see your mannerisms. I can't, explore your personality and your traits. And it's extremely, extremely disconnecting. Like I've always been fascinated by the whole idea that social media was supposed to connect us, and I feel like it's made us more disconnected than ever before. It's totally, it's all backwards. But that doesn't mean it's not without its good things. There's all sorts of things that I love about it. I get to stay connected with my brother. We get to play online video games all the time together because of this technology, and I get to spend every single night with him. He lives in California. I wouldn't talk to him but once every, week or two on the phone, and thank God we have that technology. So technology isn't always bad. It's just it can be scary though, because then you can create all sorts of horrible things. Like watch that movie Dark Waters, where they're getting into the whole, the Teflon. Oh my God, man! When you look into that, when they talk about it in the movie, and you find out that like 99% of people have Teflon in their fucking bloodstream because of what they're pumping into the air and all that, it just, you're like, oh my God, people don't know what they're playing with. It's terrifying. So when she gets into this, I'm like, I'm with you. I'm with you, girl. I'm with you. 100%. It can be terrifying. Especially now that I know where I'm at in 2020. She's back freaking, 60 years ago, and she's worried about what it's going to be like in 60 years. And here I am to tell you, like, you had some shit to worry about. A lot of stuff was cool. A lot of the shit is very, truly terrifying. So she was smart to be concerned. And okay, so basically, like, the last thing I want to talk about here. Two things. Number one, the reason the guy killed himself and the reason the guy destroyed all of his equipment was because he didn't want anyone to know what happened, because he thinks the technology is way too dangerous to exist. So he kills himself and he destroys all of his hard work. And as I said before, I think his work worked and could be utilized greatly. But, if you misuse it, but you can misuse anything. So I do think it's technology that we should have, but we should just refine it and make it better. So destroying it, I think, was silly. I understand why he did it, and I can respect it to an extent, but I just feel like he'd be smart enough to realize. But I get it. He's looking in the mirror, and he's like, this can't happen to anyone else again. Like, I'm not going to let this happen. Like, it's a very ethical thing. And I understand it, but I just think he fucked up. But this technology would be amazing, as he had stated before. So there's that. And his wife then, after 5 minutes of grilling, she's just like, all right, let me tell you the whole story. He made this machine. It's the disintegrator integrator. He turned himself into a fly. This is the technology. He busted it all up. But I'm sure if you try hard enough, you could probably figure out how to put it back together again. And so he just killed himself and destroyed all of his work for basically nothing. Maybe it put a pause button on it for a little bit. But if scientists figured out what he did, trust me, they'd come out there and they would figure it out. So that she just let the cat out of the bag, or the fly out of the bag, if you will. And then another thing, the whole he has a fly head, the fly has his head thing. This is completely nonsensical. So if his head is on the other body and the fly head is on his body, then why does he still have the ability to think like a person? Why does he remember his wife? Why is he trying to protect her? He says, I'm starting to lose control of my mind or whatever. And the fly starts to take over, and he even tries to attack and kill the wife at one point by pulling her under the press with him. Okay. It should just be the fly brain in there, and that's it. And then his head, because we see it later, it's his head, and he's yelling, help me, help me. So it's his brain in there that's saying help me. Now you could argue, oh, well, maybe that's just a fly who's saying help me, and he's just got his head and he's got the fly brain. A fly wouldn't know how to speak. It wouldn't know English. So no, that doesn't work. None of it works. None of it makes any fucking sense. The fly head on his body should have a fly brain, and he should just be a fucking monster. What it should have been is half of him should have been the fly body with the man head. Then he would be able to think and care, and then he could have had a conversation with her just from the head up, and he would have been talking to her like, honey, no, you can't come in here. No. Stay out there. And then, she would have come in and he would have had a big fly body. That would have made perfect sense. And then there would have been a fly that was flying around out there with wings and a fly head, but a human body. There you go. Problem solved. But that's not, it's just so stupid. But man, when he's caught on that ridiculously fake spider web with the ridiculously fake spider, and he's yelling, help me, they don't try to save him at all. Like, they should have immediately grabbed him or knocked the fly away. But instead, they just took a rock and smashed him. Like, what the fuck? That's so messed up. Now, maybe he's just doing himself a, he's doing him a service here. He's being good to him. He's putting him out of his misery because he already killed his body. It's kind of fucked up. But here's another thing. I don't feel like they tried very hard, and I don't feel like he tried very hard. Like, if I was him, I would have been out there. Like, look, honey, I'm a fucking fly, okay? And if you ever want your husband again, you're gonna have to get it around your head that I'm fly right now. Okay, I'm gonna take this hood off. If you can't take it, you need to leave. But I'm going out and I'm looking for this fucking fly. It's like the Billy Madison scene. You go out there and you find that fucking dog. That's this moment. He should have went out there and found that fucking fly. I should have given the whole Billy Madison speech. Whoa, 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 Mrs. Lippy. What I didn't like about the story, that's what I should be getting into. Anyway, so overall, I'm not a big fan of this movie. A lot of it was really, really silly, but man, Vincent Price is just badass. And I just realized on this watch how much he looks like a guy that I know in town. Like, he looks very similar. Like, I can't believe I never noticed it before. A younger version, much younger version, but he's pretty young in this one. And so, yeah, he's just badass. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how he plays into The Return of the Fly, which will return to the Fly next week. So, adios. Thanks to Peter for picking this setup. Sorry that it was so much more expensive than it should have been.